Right. Good evening, everybody. You see, yes, we're recording. Right. Good evening. It's we're on lesson number 8 now, and we've been doing loads of stuff, looking at lots of different artists, and doing lots of different painting techniques to improve how we do mark making and things, and also how we create that sense of atmospheric perspective in our work as well. So we've been looking at lots of these mountain scenes, using larger, more sharper brushstrokes in the foreground, and then getting softer and smaller towards the back. Okay, so a lot of you will be carrying on with that today. I may even carry on with the one that I was working on last week because I haven't finished it. But as usual, I feel that I've got to introduce something else. So we've got something for the next 3 weeks. So I may sort of hop between the two pictures, but I'll show you what we're going to be doing next over here after I've just been through a few things. Right. Okay. So we've got this idea of doing an underpainting by drawing out the river scene or the mountain scene that we've got there, and again practicing those mark making. And a lot of people have said to me that inks are brilliant for doing all this kind of different types of mark making. So I'm glad that's been appreciated and successful for a lot of people. And then the next brave thing, of course, is to work over the top of this drawing. And if you remember, I suggested making a photocopy of it if you needed to, so you could keep the original or even just photograph it. So last week we looked at a few artists, including Flamenc, and we mentioned a little bit again about Cézanne, which is down there in the bottom right-hand corner. Vlaminc's above it. He uses these much harsher colours from the Fauve or Fauve art movement. And then the artist that was inspired by that, we've got in the centre at the top there, which is Armand Jouleman. I still can't say it properly. But again, we was interested in his use of these beautiful harmonious colours. A lot of people really liked looking at those. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a couple of other pieces that you might want to have a look at. And I know that I've shown you quite a lot of artists this term, but I hope it's given you a little bit more variety of approach and some options about how you go about creating your own pieces. Now I've chosen these because I was quite intrigued by the way that these are painted. So there's one here by Phil. This one by Phil Buytendorp, and I think he's a Canadian artist, and he's created these really interesting mark making techniques on his pieces. When I say mark making techniques, I mean both the colour, but also we've got these really nice distinct outlines, which is quite different to what we've been looking at. But I was intrigued about how the artist goes about this, and so I did come across a video which I wanted to show you tonight, but I can't find it again now. But he would go out into the landscape and paint plein air, which means obviously to paint outside. And the way he would start off is we would have a box with all these boards in, all the same sort of shape. Take one of the boards out and they would be pre-prepared with a colour on the whole of the surface. And the picture in particular that I saw him paint had a red background, or like a very warm colour. And then he would paint in all the dark areas of the picture, and then add in the highlights back over the top, leaving some of the dark outlines that you can see in the picture just here. So I'm going to sort of try something that interprets that in a loose way, and I pre-prepared my watercolour paper. It doesn't have to be watercolour paper, but I've used watercolour paper in this case because I had it to hand. But so I pre-prepared it with a Venetian red background, and I've started to draw out a new landscape of a waterfall with a bridge that I'm going to be working into in a similar way, perhaps not exactly the same. So I'm going to work back over and put the details in with inks, and then I'm going to start applying some of the highlights that you can see and some of the colours that you can see, a little bit similar to this artist. So that is Phil Buytendorp. And then I read this one I've seen a few examples of. Let me just find which one I'm going to talk about. It's Dan Weimer. That's one of his there. But he does a variety of different things. I watched a little video on him last night with this canoe picture. I'll just bring that up to the top so we can get in a bit closer. There we go. So I really found this quite intriguing. I've not seen this sort of thing too often. He does quite a few landscapes in this way, particularly with water. So again, you've got this idea of the background's quite dark or darker, and then we've worked back into these shapes. Oh, this is how it looks anyway. He works into puts these shapes in to reflect the ripples and the patterns in the landscape. So that was another little bit of inspiration for tonight's starting piece as well. When I watched this video on him, I found out that what he does is he puts marks down first of all with some masking fluid, lets that dry quite thoroughly, and then he puts a wash over of acrylic, waits till that's dry, and then removes the masking fluid. So you've got these white areas, and that's at that point he starts to use watercolor over the top to get these translucent layers, and then works back in with acrylic again. So quite an interesting process. If I can, I'll get the video up and I'll show you a few bits from how he does that, because I have got the video available, but just wanted to show you that because I thought that was really interesting. And then let me just find this. I'll just zoom into this one because I quite like this one as well. So this one is, again, I think it's by Buytendorp again. So again, you've got these really, really nice, clean or clear textured outlines, I should say. But if we look into the sky here, you can see where this painting may have started. So if you look, there's these patches of colour, which it reminds me a bit of Pissarro's daubing or stippling almost. But then some of the colour beneath has been revealed underneath or been left. So we get this like mottled, really nice mottled effect. And you can see that running throughout the whole picture. And if you remember the picture that I was doing last week, which I'll show you again in a few minutes, I painted a lot of it in purple, didn't I? And then I worked back over and some of that purple was coming through. So it's quite interesting to see how this can work in perhaps a painting of your own a little bit later. And again, some of the dark areas have been shaded first of all, and then painted over with the highlights too. So I just thought that would be really nice to have a little play around with, and you'll be able to see me doing that. Right, okay, so over here, so just to sort of remind you of where I was last week. So if you remember, we've looked at Pissarro at the top here, we've looked at Cézanne's techniques down here, and then last week I took some inspiration from Armand Guillemot. Can't say it. But as I was just mentioning, the way the colour comes through on lots of different parts of this picture helps to kind of unify it a little bit, I think, as well. So yeah, even on bits where I've painted quite a lot, there's a little bit of this purpley colour coming through paint here. And if we go down here, we've still got little bits of the purple appearing here as well. So I'm hoping I can get a bit more time to work on this one, but I did want to sort of give you the option to do something different as well. So if I get rid of that for a second, we've got this really, really bright, vivid Venetian red on this surface. So I'm going to see what happens with it, but I've chosen this photograph to work from this evening. So I've gone away from the mountains a little bit with this one, and so I've got this really nice bridge coming across, and then found the waterfall going through the rocks here, and plenty of detail in the foreground, plenty of detail in the background as well. And what I plan to do is work over this surface, which I've already started to very loosely sketch out. Well, not loosely because I've used the grid, but I haven't put too much detail in. But I'm going to work into this with some blue ink to begin with, because that will dry nice and quickly and means that I can work over it. And then when it comes to the sky, if you remember us looking at that artwork a minute ago, I'm going to use this kind of daubing effect up here probably quite early on, so that we can see how those colours look when they come through. So you will find that some colours are quite transparent. So sometimes you may find that you need to add a little bit of white into the paint to make it sit on the surface rather than it be too transparent. So some paints have got more opacity than others, so you can experiment with those when you get to that sort of stage, if you get to that tonight. So I should be working into it with ink, probably just around the top area to begin with, and then I'll start painting, and you can see how this progresses tonight. Okay. So just a reminder, you can, if you want to get, I've just used this grid to get the outlines really quickly tonight. So I've gridded it up. So, as you know, an easy way to do that is just to fold into halves like this, pull it out, and then put the grid over the top in pen. And I put these diagonal lines in here because that also helps you to spot where all the different shapes and things are. Okay, and then I've enlarged it slightly. Now, if you do decide that you want to go a bit bigger than this, then I'll show you how to enlarge and create a grid quickly if you need me to. But I know I'm quite aware that I've done that a few times over the different classes. Okay, so everyone's staring over here. So I will get started on this, and hopefully be able to see it progressing and things like that. And if you've finished everything else, then maybe this is the next thing for you to try out. These images, including this one and artist work, are all on the website if you need them. But I shall have these ones out, excuse me, on display while I'm working. Okay, right. Now, do we have any questions about any of this exciting extravaganza of art this evening?
So unusually, I'm using some ink to do the underpainting, as I mentioned before. So the nice thing about using this ink is that you, as I've mentioned again, you can create really lovely marks using a brush and a little bit of ink. And this is a nice way to map out where everything is going to go. Obviously, I've drawn some of the basic shapes, but now, having sort of decided where and worked out where all of the detail is going to go, I can start to draw in using the brush and the ink where all the details are going to go. And remember, this involves adding in some of your own personal language, if you've got one or if you've developed one, using pens and pencils previously. You can translate some of your brush skills or mark making skills into your drawing that you're making. And so this acts, as I said, like a little bit of a map of where things are going to go. But the other thing is, having looked at those artists previously, we can use some of the darker marks on here to paint around as such to create this sort of not halo, but outline sort of effect that we had from the artist we've looked at this evening as well. So this section did actually go quite nice and quickly, and I was able to get onto the painting section quite soon after we had the intro to the lesson. So you can see I'm obviously working here a lot more on the foreground. So I've got these bigger areas of tone and shadow on here. And obviously some watered down ink to create that sense of the volume and the shape of these rocks in the foreground. And then the bit which we come to quite soon is where I actually get, starting to add in some of the white paint or the highlighted areas into the image to start to draw attention to those areas that mostly have white within this picture, which is why this particular image is so really nice to work with, because we've got plenty of highlighted areas, whites, which stand out against the darker areas of such as the bridge and the rocks and texture of the bridge and the stones that the bridge is made of. So it's really good fun as well, working with this really lovely bright Venetian red that I've got underneath here. So when I applied that colour, I used a large flat brush, and with the acrylics, the important thing is if you want a nice flat surface, to keep brushing it lightly, backwards and forwards, up and down and so forth, until it becomes quite flat. So this is the bit that I really enjoy, is putting in these light areas of colour, white and blue on here, but also having looked at the artist this evening, I'm purposefully leaving some little hints of that Venetian red coming through the sky in the background there. And you'll see me in a minute working very roughly around the branches of the tree, and my intention is to come back to that tree, put the branches in again with a darker colour, and then work back in again with the blues and the whites around the branches. There's a little bit of grey, obviously you can see being applied into that as well. Possibly I could vary those marks a little bit more, but I'm quite keen to get going across the surface of the sky. Start to see how things are looking, and then you'll see me start to work in a slightly different way with the water down here. So I'm trying to sort of think a little bit about the way that the brush strokes might reflect the way that water flows down the stream. There we go. So we've got the picture up there now. So I'm referring to the picture constantly, not just not only using, some of my own ideas here, but also continuously referring back to the image that we're working from. So some longer brush strokes as opposed to the more of the daubing at the top in the sky. Some horizontal lines just up there under the bridge. I was quite keen to show the way the water is perhaps a bit more settled at the top there and then flows down over the rocks. And the other thing I was trying to do is make those brush strokes get as bigger as we come close to the foreground. And then up here, I decided again to sort of bring in some of my own ideas here. So I'm using some kind of yellow ochre and a few other colours as well. And then experimenting with putting some lines and things in between those stones on the bridge, and again making those brush strokes a lot smaller towards the back gives us a sense of space and distance. A few highlighted rocks in there. There we're bringing in some more of those greys. Using a bit of colour, maybe these browns and things as well, is just lifting the colours out of the background there. So there's lots more work to do, but it's about enjoying those marks as well, and being aware that we can have some of that red coming back through from the pitch, from the background that we originally painted. Some of the Venetian red popping through the picture. And as we go down to the water here, I decided to start introducing some of those browns as well, because in some sections you can see how the water is thinner, so you can see through to the rock. And now I'm using much more of a stronger white, so that the opacity of the paint brings that water forward a lot more. So titanium white being much more of an opaque colour. And we're mixing it in with some of the browns again and some blue as well. But yeah, so I really enjoyed working on this. The nice thing about it is that we get the sense of space quite quickly with this image, because the photographer who took this has been right down low in those rocks, and then you can see right into the distance and through the bridge, so it's a lovely picture to work with. Anyway, we'll carry on with this next lesson. So I hope you've enjoyed watching today's class and taking part, hopefully. I'll see you soon.